We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Monday, April 29th, 2024. Man, I hope every White Sox fan got a chance to watch the games this weekend. What a total and complete surprise in the best way possible. For the first time since June of 2023, the Chicago White Sox are on a 3-game winning streak as they swept the Tampa Bay Rays. The offense produced in a big way thanks to newcomer Tommy Pham and Andrew Benintendi as he had huge clutch hits for the White Sox. Oh, and Erick Fedde continues to deal on the mound. We'll also preview the upcoming Minnesota Twins series and look around Major League Baseball as that uniform snafu is finally being addressed. First, White Sox general manager Chris Getz spoke with the media prior to the series starting on Friday. He shared his feelings of the team's awful start to 2024.
Quite honestly, it is frustrating to look up and have a record like that. No one was hoping for something like that, but you look at the health of the organization underneath in our farm system, and it's certainly climbing in the ranks. I saw here recently where it was ranked as high as number 3. You look at our Birmingham club and our other affiliates that are playing really well. You look at some of the arms that we've acquired in the last year and most recently in the Dylan Cease trade that have really gone out there and performed well. So it's exciting from that standpoint. Looking towards the future, I mean, there's no better place to look than what you have in your farm system, and eventually when the time is right, some of those players will work their way up to the major leagues, and we hope for greater success with the talent that we've acquired.
As we spoke about on this podcast, Pedro Grifol's managerial seat should be red hot, or he shouldn't be the manager at all. Getz shared why he's still sticking with Grifol.
I mean, he's been steady. We just asked for consistency from our coaching staff, and the clubhouse, it seems to be, they're showing up on a daily basis, ready to play and perform. Obviously, we wish we had better results, but the evaluation is always ongoing for players, staff, and myself, and it's still early in the year. Obviously, it can feel like there's a lot to overcome, and really focusing on getting our players better on a daily basis.
To help Grifol out, Getz called up Tommy Pham to join the White Sox, optioning Dominic Fletcher back down to Charlotte. It seems the White Sox are getting older for the roster, and Getz explained his point of view, trying to find balance for the lineup.
There's no perfect way to go about it. We're at a point right now that certainly we're trying to go out there and score more runs. There are some younger players on this roster. We will continue to add younger players as the season progresses, and some of those veteran guys that have been through situations perhaps like this before or have a proven track record, can help in the development of some players at the major league level. So there's a handful of different factors. At this point, just felt like it was time to make some of those moves and add some different bats and a different dynamic to this team.
Pham is a veteran bat who has experience winning. He was in the World Series last year and played terrific for Arizona. Getz shared what his expectations are of Pham being added to the White Sox.
Yeah, I mean, we're at a point where we're looking to shake some things up a little bit offensively. Tommy Pham's got a pretty solid history of offensive performance in this league. So to be able to get his bat in the lineup, I think it's going to be helpful. It's his offense. He's a guy who's on a playoff team last year. He's had a lot of success in the big leagues. He can hit the ball out of the ballpark. He can put together a quality at bat. From what I've gathered, he's got such an obsessiveness to win and show up every day. And I say that not even necessarily on the wins and losses. It's just the performance for himself to help us move in a direction to win ball games.
Pedro Grifol is already appreciative of Pham's presence on the team and what he's bringing early to the clubhouse.
You know what? He brings a hell of a lot more than a professional at bat. I mean, he's all business. And you want to talk about, a presence that kind of carries over to other guys. I mean, this guy's all business. He gets here, he gets ready to practice, and it's all about getting ready for a baseball game, to win a game. And you see him out there. I mean, he goes hard in everything he does, but he does it in practice too. So yeah, there's a heck of a presence that he brings with his game, which is really good. But there's an edge to it too that really rubs off on everybody, coaches, everybody. So he's been a good addition to us.
Now joining me to talk about Tommy Pham and the White Sox sweeping Tampa Bay this weekend are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And James, the White Sox are now 3-0 since Tommy Pham has arrived. Now the season is saved. The Chicago White Sox are going to begin their miracle run back into contention, right?
Sure. Contention to not set a record for losses, which was like an imminent, almost primal concern that was consuming me at the end of that road trip in Minneapolis. Now they just kind of look like a more typical, day late, dollar short team also ran. I feel like we can smoothly transition to those prospects are looking nice. Maybe they'll be better next year. Central's always winnable. And, the sort of things we're supposed to focus on in 2025 and not like stare at like this roster of 30-something is setting history that we were worried about. Pham is like, hopefully, especially if you play him in center, though, I don't know, maybe at some point the negative ratings hit on him a little bit. Like, he's fine, he's competent, but he's clearly like a corner outfielder instead of terms of range. I don't know if he's going to be 20 home run pop. I don't know if he's going to hit for big average, but like something looking up on Pham is like basically since he became a regular, he's like a top 10 player in baseball for like not swinging out of the zone. So that like provides like a stability of what he'll be. It's hard to really it'll be interesting to see like when his career falls off a cliff, because like he's got like this one thing that makes it really hard to have the bottom completely fall out on him. But I definitely like, but I don't think he's like a savior or anything or an MVP, but like as far as like having a positive influence, like I'm pretty in. Like he's a fun guy. He doesn't sugarcoat anything, which makes it very fun to deal with. And talking to him about his contract talks, or the atmosphere of like the clubhouse and 3 wins is very much like everyone's like, oh my god, baseball's fun again. I've learned to laugh. I smile, and fans like, good series, keep it going. With like it's like not like connected to this like feeling of desperation at all. Like someone walked up to a clubhouse after today like, oh, it was an amazing series, man. He's like, long season. Just like went back to his day. I was like, yeah, this is good. This is good to have this guy in here. So there'll be plug in more 30-somethings. They brought Bad Keller up. They almost used him in the bullpen today. Mike Clevenger's another Charlotte start away. So there'll be more efforts to slap on some over 30, over 10 years in the majors type of competence on this roster. And now we can stop worrying about history just when we were starting to get our designs on like a little like 100, the road to 120 losses meter on the website. Now we can be more methodical with it.
Oh, that's good to know. Pham did go 5 for 14 this weekend against Tampa Bay. He did bat second, as James mentioned, Jim, playing center field, getting a chance to be at the Saturday and Sunday games. Jim, I think at some point, obviously Luis Robert, when he is healthy, he'll be back in center field, and we're going to see a big difference. No offense to Tommy Pham, but he does not have the same type of reaction speed or closing speed that Luis Robert has. So we may see a little bit more doubles than some of the spectacular plays that Luis Robert could run down, but we'll see in what physical condition Robert is when he does return to the White Sox. But Pham did score 3 runs in this series for the White Sox, including scoring from third base with the infield drawn in, and he made a great slide, great reaction on the ball being batted into the infield. And we are constantly looking for positive outcomes to hold on to early in 2024. Jim, can Pham do what the other veteran position players could not and continue to provide better than league average play?
I think it's possible. I think he's, if nothing else, like he helps break up the White Sox's problem of having like 4 number 9 hitters in the lineup at any given time. Like that's really the issue, is like it's not a it's a short lineup. It's like, especially when Nicky Lopez is batting leadoff, he's somebody who has decent plate discipline maybe, but doesn't scare anybody into actually pitching away from him. So he doesn't draw walks, except for the 1-3 walk game he had, but he's not, he's somebody you can be pitched to and go a quiet 0 for 4. And then all of a sudden you're waiting for the lineup to start at the second spot. And maybe it goes through like Gavin Sheets and Eloy Jimenez because he looks okay right now. But then, maybe Robbie Grossman, if it's a good matchup, he's a plus guy. Maybe Paul DeJong, when he's on one of his roles, is somebody who can bat 6th-ish. But, then it's just a matter of like, well, is Corey Lee actually for real? Is, Danny Mendick, is this form going to stick? Like, it's a whole bunch of questions. Whereas Pham, as long as like, the question he has is like, is the decline going to set in any points like that James referred to? Like he's getting up there, 36. Like, if he hits a wall, wouldn't be the most unexpected thing, but for the time being, like he's fine. So like he's somebody who in the middle of an order, like, maybe like 5th, 6th in a decent lineup, he wouldn't look out of place. So, having him bat second in this lineup is fine. And it helps take the pressure off like the Paul DeJongs who need a good matchup in order to thrive. Or Corey Lee, that he doesn't have to be like a plus batting 5th. Like, and then, it's anything that helps the White Sox distance themselves from the time where Kevin Pillar was a cleanup hitter, I think is sorely needed. And I think Pham fills that role for now. And I think, maybe his role can be overstated as far as somebody who will slap sense into the rest of the order, figuratively or literally. But in terms of just the talent, providing both in terms of power, patience, some base running know-how, which he also has, I think that's enough. Like defense will probably hurt. However, it is kind of nice to have like an outfielder of like average to above average height. Like watching Benintendi and Fletcher trying to run long routes with how many steps they have to take really like adds uncertainty to the equation. Whereas like Pham, like his strides are slower, but at least like it's a case of like the lines tend to be cleaner even if he doesn't get there. So that's kind of my first impression of his defense. But either way, like, yeah, Robert coming back is going to be the one, or Fletcher, should he immediately figure out what's wrong with him in Charlotte, will be the ones to stabilize the outfield, and Pham will be around probably as long as he's, not wanted by other teams yet, that, he can be in right field and be fine.
The White Sox offense as a whole woke up big time over the weekend. They scored 21 runs, crushing the over. So congrats, Jim. You hit on the over. Actually, they hit on the over the first game of the series, scoring 9 runs against the Rays. The White Sox scored 27% of their runs for this season over this 3-game series. That's how big of an offensive outburst it was for the White Sox. Friday night, it was a big 3-run homer from Martin Maldonado and a 2-run homer from Eloy Jimenez. Tampa Bay had so many opportunities to score runs in that game, but the White Sox were able to win that 9-4. Saturday, they were down 3-0. Andrew Benintendi tied the game with his season's first home run. And down 1 in extra innings, Benintendi walked off the Rays with a 2-run homer. He drove in 6 RBIs in that game. And then on Sunday, with the White Sox holding on to a 1-run lead in the 8th inning and the bases loaded, Benintendi came up big again with a 2-run single. For the weekend, Andrew Benintendi was 6 for 14 hitting with those 2 homers and 8 RBIs. Pedro Grifol shared the adjustments Benintendi is trying to make post-game.
He's stopped filleting balls to left field, and he's hitting the ball. He's trying to hit the ball where it's pitched, and it's hard at this level to get inside out a ball, at 95, 98 and hit the ball to left field. I know, over time, at times, it keeps him close and it keeps him using the other side. But he's just letting it fly now, and he's letting his eyes do the work, which is, wherever the ball's pitched, that's where I'm going to try to hit it. And if they're pitching me in, I'm going to try to pull. And not just and not just bad intentions. I mean, didn't you like that term the other day? Bad intentions. He's hitting with bad intentions. And that's what makes him really good.
James, what did Benintendi have to say after his performance this weekend in trying to get back on track since he was off to a terrible start in 2024?
He wasn't trying to make too much of it. I think he's generally spoken to what Pedro alluded to with, he wants to be able to pull the ball in the air, but as far as like forcing it, or he'd have to find kind of the right timing or rhythm to really feel like he could. Oddly enough, like after Pedro went back and said that, I looked and saw like that he got like the double he had off of Joe Ryan was very much hitting the ball where it's pitched to kind of game in inside thigh high, and for him able to turn on it. I think it's a good sign, but it's very similar to what he said in kind of past interviews where he kind of minimized it, where I think there was a level of anxiety with just because we've only seen him really be a below average hitter in a White Sox uniform. And something he said to me previously, and again, the other day, was that like, oh, my April's always bad. I'm a slow starter, and I think historically it's either his worst month or his second worst month. So he was trying to, like, without the anxiety of feeling like his wrist didn't work that he had last season, and kind of a search for rhythm or timing that never really came about. He tried to repeatedly say like this was just a good game and him kind of coming out of it, but he wasn't existentially worried the way like last season that he was going to be like lost in the fog and permanently under decline. And I talked to Jason Bourgeois over the weekend about his feeling, and he kind of said like, well, he's slowing down, but we want him to err on the side of no doubles. So like we're going to take, hits and singles dropped in front of him if that's the side of it. But I think that Bourgeois' standing is like, we hurt way more if we challenge Benintendi to play shallower and, risk, his going back speed. So especially on the strength of these last 2 games, there's a lot more of all's well, nothing to see here. Just a veteran player getting his feel, and things are going to be fine, and not like, nobody in this lineup is ever going to hit again, which I think was a reasonable thing to entertain for the first 3 or so weeks of the season. I wanted to mention my favorite thing about Pham's defense so far is that like typically when you put someone who's overstretched in position, especially in outfield, you see them like panicking where they're like racing they're I gotta chase the ball. I'm like, oh, hit off the wall, now I have to chase that, and like they're constantly like a step late to every moment. Whereas like Pham, you like the ball's hitting the air, he's just like, that's a double, better go run so I can play the carom. It's not like having these delusions of grandeur out there that lead to him slamming the wall. So like, I better go run to that spot after it bounces. So like that's the level of like veteran know-how that he can
it's less frenetic.
Yeah.
When you know. Jim, you wrote about Benintendi on SoxMachine.com. when it comes to
Sure
TVs and movies, there's a term called plot armor, when a character does really reckless things, but the audience knows that character can't die because the show will no longer make sense if they do. From your column, I would say Benintendi has contract armor, which is why he'll continue to get playing time no matter how well or how poorly he's hitting for the White Sox. And these last two games are really needed for everyone involved. White Sox coaches, Chris Getz, fans, media, even Benintendi himself. Can this weekend be a turning of the tide for Benintendi?
If he keeps pulling the ball with some authority every once in a while, like when it makes sense to do so, yeah. I mean, like, in a way, the die has already been cast because, like, his chance to make an impact on the team was last year, and it didn't work, and now they're rebuilding, and now by the time the White Sox get good, he probably will have declined enough to where, like, he's average, and given that the legitimate reason White Sox fans have to think like that, you know, they're never going to spend again, or they're never going to spend meaningfully, and Benintendi was their biggest shot, and it's just going to dissuade Reinsdorf from approving a big contract. Like, you can understand why everybody, you know, watching him, White Sox fans in general, are kind of cool to him, being like a difference maker and just somebody they're tolerating, kind of like post-trade James Shields, like, hope you can give 200 innings. You're being paid a lot for it, and we're not going anywhere, but at least you can make it watchable. I think this is kind of the role Benintendi's occupying now. Yeah, like that post was writing about, I was thinking, like, you can't overreact and say, cut him now, eat $60 million. It's just more a matter of just, you know, how they've basically moved all the deck chairs they can around him. And now it's a matter of, like, will he actually improve? Or by the time, like, Robert comes back, like, will, you know, attention be paid to him in a way that, you know, could reflect some meaningful dissatisfaction with the status quo that he's been providing the White Sox since he arrived. You know, you can blame the Hammond injury to a certain amount, because I think Rick Hahn, one of his flaws was, like, habitually overestimating a player's ability to come back from a season-ending injury smoothly. And, you know, maybe Chris gets to the same thing with Dominic Fletcher for that matter. But, you know, with that in the rearview mirror, like, and now it's just a matter of, like, you know, provide something, you know, show something on either side of the ball, the way like Martin Maldonado was not until his homer, or at least like Maldonado, like the only thing that he could be praised for were things fans can't see. And when you have it happening at like multiple positions, that gets really frustrating for the consumer on the end, being like, well, what can I see? And, you know, that's just kind of a rhetorical question. So this was a welcome weekend for Benintendi. And if he's just like fine the rest of the season, or he eventually gets up to like, you know, I'm thinking off the top of my head, like 750 OPS or something like that by the end of the year, like that'll be okay. You know, it's not going to be a transcendent or fun or enjoyable. And, you know, it's not going to like provide a whole ton of satisfaction, but just, you know, staring at him and thinking, like, counting down how much money is owed to him, like on a ticker. Like, I remember going to Union Square in New York, and there was like some kind of billboard from some think tank talking about the deficit. You know, every second the deficit expanded by this amount, and just, you know, in the trillions, and just the, you know, constantly moving. And I could see like just being an opposite, you know, having like a ticker outside guaranteed rate field of the a countdown for how much Benintendi's owed every day, just, you know, dropping by, you know, pennies every hour, if this continued the way he was playing. But once it's out of the crisis mode, then just another thing to, you know, man, maybe it'll provide like a big hit while I'm at a game, and it'll make it worth having gone to that game versus just, you know, staring into the void.
It was fun being in attendance for Benintendi hitting both of those home runs. Everybody sitting around me in Section 108 was shocked when Benintendi hit the first homer, and we all knew that second one was going to go out with just the way that it carried. And just so much joy, because everybody was happy that the White Sox finally won a series. And to your point, Jim, like in order for Benintendi to have a season OPS of 750, he's going to need as like the complete opposite of his April in May, June, or July.
In Abreu August,
he's going to have to go crazy. He's going to have to carry like a 900 OPS for a month just to get his season OPS to 750. Which then everybody will point to and be like, oh, you guys were overreacting on Andrew Benintendi and see he bounced back, and it's like, yeah, he has to play this well just to be league average. That's like how far he's had to come. Before Sunday's game, Benintendi did raise his weighted runs created plus to 42. So before Sunday's game, he was still 58% below league average. Shout out to Martin Maldonado. Your big home run got you from -60 up to -16. So everybody's making ground in the White Sox offense after this weekend. Let's switch over to the pitching side. And on Sunday, Erick Fedde once again was dealing for the White Sox. He almost pitched a complete game. He got into the ninth inning. I was a bit surprised that the White Sox pushed him into the ninth inning. But Fedde's final line, 8 1/3 innings. He allowed 7 hits, 2 earned runs, no walks, 9 strikeouts. Fedde's season ERA is now 2.60. James, what's working for Erick Fedde?
Everything. Well, enough things where he can turn to one thing on one start and the other. Like this week was like, the results were most impressive, but like he faced the Twins batting order that was like almost all lefties, maybe 1 or 2 righties, a couple switch hitters in there that batted left-handed. And, his strongest pitches are essentially the sweeper and the sinker. And after watching Cannon get lit up the night before, he's like, I got to go up and in on these guys. I have to set up my changeup. And he's able to throw his cutter, which is effectively his 4th most used pitch, the plurality of the time, and work up and in effectively on them, and throw some front door sinkers as well to get inside on them and dominate, kind of inverting his arsenal, and then come around and play a more right-handed heavy Rays lineup. Now, neither of these lineups are like at top strength or good, but for him to flip it around, and then he said post game today that he didn't really think that his sinker or changeup was working. It's mostly cutters and sweepers, and he's able to kind of work east-west when he's facing so many righties. But to just kind of flip to a different area of his game and then have taken into the 9th inning on a day where the bullpen was taxed. I think we asked like Pedro post game, like, so the 2-run single in the 8th that allowed you to bring Fedde back out. Otherwise, you wouldn't consider it. And he's like, no, I would have brought out Fedde if it was 2-1. He's like, I was trying to stay away with, like, he made this big point about like how taxed the bullpen was, where we all sniffed out the roster moves coming the night before. But then added on, like, he even using leisure today, he said like he was trying to stay away from him. He warmed up Brad Keller at one point for like, we had the idea like, oh, if they get tanked, they'll have like Keller work for 3-4 innings or something like that. He was preparing in like the 8th inning for maybe leverage. He wasn't going to drop in Prolanda Baroa for a 1-inning one-run save. So it was at a point of like absolute need, at least in terms of what they were presenting towards us. I'm sure, there's some private backroom conversations about how someone is down, even if we like look at their usage chart and maybe they only worked the previous day, or 2 out of 3, and it didn't seem like necessarily they were out. But he was operating on the notion that they were extremely dry in terms of the bullpen, and for Fedde to step up in that moment and also just be working as efficiently as he's been in a White Sox uniform, which that was kind of the issue in his first couple of starts, was that it looked impressive. He missed bats, but he really worked himself out of pitches by the the 4th or 5th inning. This was pretty good. I think the conservative scouting thing, and I was talking to like some scouts who are friends today, it's like we're willing to like confidently move up and say like this guy's a number 4 starter, which like sounds really conservative, but like those things that don't come on trees. And he's obviously, when you have a number 4 starter and say someone that's like their foundation, they can play up pretty significantly. He's clearly pitching like a pretty high grade 3 right now, but as far as like leader in the clubhouse for all-star rep, I don't see who else you'd go to. So he can only continue to build up our trust in what he can do from here.
Yeah, we're still a couple months away from Major League Baseball's All-Star Game, but I agree with James. He is the clubhouse leader now of representing the White Sox at the All-Star Game. I'm assuming the White Sox will only have one representative at the All-Star Game this year. Jim, how confident are you in Erick Fedde that this level of performance can last? Because it's been a great first impression so far.
Mildly confident. Like, I think he's done well enough to where like he can regress a little bit, or like he can be adjusted to a little bit and still be a contributor to not only the White Sox, but like a lot of rotations around baseball. So that was my concern, is like he'd be barely hanging on, or, good start, awful start, good start, awful start. And then like you just wait for the bottom to fall out. And it's a case of like what James said, was that, he's got a couple different ways to attack. And this was like, when you look at the lineup and you see so many righties in the lineup and you see him go to the sweeper and just like keep going to the sweeper, keep like, mashing that one button, and the Rays really aren't providing reason to go away from it. So he keeps doing it and it keeps working. Like, it's very satisfying in a way that, makes it look very simple. And it reminded me of watching Noah Schultz in Bowling Green against a Rays lineup, or a Bowling Green Hot Rods. They're the Rays affiliate, but they had 7 lefties there. And I thought like, oh, this is gonna be 12 strikeouts in 4 innings. And then turns out Schultz kind of struggled a little bit. And it's unreasonable to expect, but like when you have that kind of lineup playing right into the strength of a pitcher, at least, or one of 2 strengths that Fedde has, that feels real comfortable going to and just looks simple. That's, you like taking advantage of those opportunities when it's very hard for the White Sox to have advantages to press like that. So, it's big for him, big for the White Sox, and apparently big for Pedro Grifol, because he did not want to make multiple trips to the bullpen, and Fedde didn't make them. So perhaps it's a case of, not that Fedde has to worry about being in a doghouse, or that they're going to need pitchers all over the place, but like that probably earned some points for him in the case that he needs to cash him in for a favor at any point.
Erick Fedde is going to be very popular this week for those that follow fantasy baseball or baseball gambling. In his last 3 starts, Erick Fedde has only allowed 13 hits, 3 earned runs, walking just 3, striking out 25. He has struck out 20 batters at his last 2 starts without walking anyone. And even though the White Sox are now 2-4 in Erick Fedde starts, the Chicago White Sox are perfect. They're 6-0 against the spread. So you're going to see these stories across the outlets. Watch the White Sox, put money on the White Sox when Erick Fedde starts, because these have been really tight games when the White Sox have Erick Fedde on the mound. Sunday's win was the first game this season that it didn't result in a 1-run game. It almost did. But yeah, the 2-run win for the White Sox, first game of the year for Erick Fedde start that didn't result in a 1-run game. So there you go. So if you're playing fantasy baseball, or if you put money on baseball, pay attention to Erick Fedde, and also Patrick Corbin if you need help paying off your rent or mortgage. He's great in that avenue.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Owning a small business can be overwhelming. How can your business stand out and connect with customers? Easy. Get Constant Contact. There's so many places to reach customers. Email, text messages, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, live events, the list goes on. How are you, as the business owner, expected to own all of those channels? That's where Constant Contact comes in to help. With Constant Contact, you'll reach new audiences, grow your customer list, and communicate more effectively to sell more, raise more, and fast-track growth. I use this to grow my email list, and you should too. So get going and start growing your business today with a free trial at ConstantContact.com. Just go to ConstantContact.com right now. Constant Contact, helping the small stand tall. ConstantContact.com.
The next topic. So after this big weekend, it is this big stir, especially on social media, and it makes for a great viral video, is the home run call from John Schriffen for Andrew Benintendi's walk-off.
Make on deck. Benintendi! Get out! Let's go! The White Sox walk it off into 10. And for the first time all season, the Sox have won 2 in a row. Say it with me. Say it proud for all the haters. Southside, stand up!
Jim, you wanted 5 minutes to talk about Schriffen's performance in the TV booth about this home run call. Are you standing up or sitting down for Schriffen after the first 28 games?
I think sitting down, but I asked for 5. I could probably go 30 by myself. Like, you could probably just leave the room, go tend to other matters, take Frankie for a walk, and I would still be talking because I'm trying to work through it myself. Because when I heard that home run call, at first I thought everybody's going to be making fun of him. Like, that was just a over the top, ludicrous call. And I looked at the comments, and maybe it's because the White Sox finally won a game, but people seem firmly on his side and, said oh, that was a great call. Benetti didn't have those kind of calls. I never remember a big call Benetti made. That's when I realized that, in my case, I probably want, or maybe what I look for from a broadcaster is different from what maybe the average fan looks for from a broadcaster. Because when I listen to a broadcaster, I look for information. How good is the information? How special is the information? And Benetti was well regarded because his information on the White Sox was sound, but also his information around the league was sound. That's why he was so respected by other fan bases. Why, if a fan base didn't care for their broadcast booth, they would happily listen to Benetti because he didn't get much about their team wrong. So if you heard him talking about Orioles prospects or, Twins pitching depth, etc., you could largely trust that he was reading the right stuff or, had the right contacts to, and took the time to inform himself about it. Whereas Schriffen, when it comes to the information, so far the information's pretty bad. If it's there, because I'm trying to think, he's referred to Corey Lee as a star or emerging star. He's referred to Lenine Sosa as a young star. Basically any player who is under the age of 27 and does something as a star. And, he offloads all analysis and reads on players and stuff to Stone, and he introduces a lot of points with how about something, and then he doesn't actually provide a whole lot aside from general enthusiasm. So that's a case where I find him kind of disappointing, but I'm also withholding judgment until he's there for a full year. What I thought was funny about the home run call is that it's been tough for him to be as excited as he wants to be, and you hear it sometimes, with what he has to work with, and he doesn't want to rip on the team or he doesn't want to criticize it. He offloads criticism to Stone. Maybe because he doesn't feel comfortable doing it yet. Maybe because it's not in his nature. Maybe it's because he just wants to be more secure in the seat before he starts ripping guys. But his tone will change when an umpire blows a call. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yes.
He'll be talking about milkshakes or basically talking about anything to distract from the product. But as soon as Erick Fedde or Garrett Crochet doesn't get a called strike 3, there's a venom in his voice that suddenly pops up. Oh, come on, you got to give it. Where did that come from? You're all of a sudden you're selling promotional T-shirts and now you're angry. And when Benintendi hit that home run, you heard that energy come out in a unhinged positive way, and then back to the negative way when he talked about the haters. But I think one of his challenges maybe, or one of the things he's getting used to as a baseball broadcaster is that modulation, going from, play-by-play, standard action, standard, reading promos and such, to having emotion about something. Cause it goes from 0 to slam ball, and it's very jarring. And I'm not sure if that's just going to be something to get used to from him or something he needs to even out. But once that ball left and he's just screaming, and it reminded me of the Hawks' Red It Done Moo on the Jordan Danks walk-off, to where, like, I'm not sure what words are coming out of his mouth.
Classic.
Yeah, and in a way it was good. Like, I remember the home run call. I'm going to remember, this Schriffen home run call is going to be etched in my brain. And then, it culminates in Southside Stand Up, which I think, that's kind of what ruined it for me, I think, is if he didn't use Southside Stand Up in the first spring training victory, I think that call could have been special. If he saved it for like a big moment where, all right, this is, you're not watching the worst team in baseball anymore. Feel a little bit good about yourselves. Like, I could see Southside Stand Up being deployed in a way that be like, yeah, this is finally a reason to be invested. But he uses it for every single victory. He leans into it, and just like, you didn't know what Orland Park was. Like, why are you telling us what to do when you just got here and you talk about all the things you're looking to learn from Chicago, and he's bossing the South Side around? That's kind of how it reads to me. Like, you just got here. Like, ease up with the orders until, you get a little bit used to the place. So anyway, I think it's my 5 minutes on John Schriffen.
Okay. James, you got Schriffen thoughts? You get a chance to be with him. I mean, he's been part of the media scrum. That critique, like,
He's part of like every scrum. Like,
okay,
he's exhaustive worker. He's like clearly working the clubhouse constantly. Like, I don't listen to a lot of the broadcasts. Like, I didn't listen to a lot of Benetti, just like in the press box. Just like I listen to the announcers when I'm sitting and watching at home on my couch. I don't like, it's not my process at the game. So like the volume of him, I don't really like. I don't get a big chance to appreciate him over the course of like day after day of like this, the voice that's narrating this team. So I would say in general, like, especially as a beat writer and dispassionate and like very much evidence like a walk-off, like, I don't feel like I'm the intended audience. And that's definitely doubled in the fact that like a lot of the things that he's introducing or talking about are things that like maybe he's discovered for the first time because he's working clubhouse for the first time and he's getting these new insights. And it is a product of the fact that he's like constantly talking to players, and you can see like the level of work ethic he thinks to it and like what he's picking up, and think like, I bet if I dropped in on this in like 4 or 5 years and like not all this is new to him or not in our first month, he's going to be like dropping the stuff naturally. And like, I would think the level of conversation he's having, the clubhouse is just going to continue to pay dividends, but it's going to take time to see it. But it's very like, I think some people, especially people have been suffering through this team being like really bad and being a huge disappointment and being nowhere near what they were like very explicitly promised several times over. He doesn't have that level of jadedness to it, and I think some people probably took it the wrong way when he said the haters, because they thought like, well, I'm a 40-year White Sox fan. I'm their biggest hater.
I have license to hate them.
And it's like, I feel like I'm rushing his defense, but like, I'm definitely, from being around him, it's like, I can guarantee you he's not directing it towards the fans. Like, he's very earnest and like, this is like my team, this is my tribe, and like they've been getting beat on by the national audiences and everyone making graphics about how terrible they were, and he's pushing back on that. I don't think it's like an internal thing, because there's like not a snarky bone in his body. He's just like very much having time in his life learning the sport and trying to do it like as hard as possible. So my inclination is to be like, let it wait, because like this is a guy who's like working really hard and like is only going to keep growing with the way he's approaching the job. But it's kind of like everything with the White Sox, where it's like, it's so hard to see what the future is, and like digesting all these things, they're just kind of like necessary evils or necessary steps all at once, is a really overwhelming experience, and has been for most of this month. But I think our guys at the 108 really like the kind of in your face like energy to the call. Players loved it. Like, as beaten down as they've been like all this month, for them to hear somebody say, cheering for them, like sticking to the haters, like they're all about that. That's only going to continue to like strengthen his relationships in there. And that's a level of relationship building in the clubhouse that I can't really emulate. But I think there's certainly a vein he's tapping into that's just not necessarily mine, which is a lot more, I'm going to write 1,600 words about Erick Fedde's changeup grip. And like, that's not the wave that he's operating on. but he's like not Benet. Like, I like Jason a lot. Jason obviously pumped my stuff a lot, and that was great. And I feel like Jason and I had a lot of like conversations about baseball or seeing the same things. And like, that's not what I get with John so far, but like what I see with John is like, that dude's definitely working at what he's doing. And so I'd be interested to see how it grows, because like he works the clubhouse more than any other beat reporter. I can tell you that much.
Here's the comp, because I've been thinking about this for a while. People have been asking me, because of the podcasting, the broadcasting background that I have. And there are things I point out to my wife, Kim, and now she can't unsee it. And I think that's impacted her thoughts about John Schriffen. John Schriffen is Chuck Swirsky. The way Chuck calls all games is almost identical the way that John Schriffen calls games. And I get why the White Sox now hire John Schriffen. Because if you go back when Chuck Swirsky filled in for White Sox broadcasts, John does the same broadcasting techniques. I don't know why Steve Stone is more open to it now than he was for Chuck a few years ago. But Chuck is one of the... Man, he's been calling basketball games forever. And that energy and the pace of basketball fits perfectly for Chuck Swirsky. I am concerned baseball is a little slow for John Schriffen. He's got great energy. He's got great enthusiasm. Bless your heart, John, for trying to hype up White Sox games to start 2024. I appreciate it. But there's so many dead periods and there's so many slow parts in a 9-inning game. And my concern, my constructive criticism is that unless you're introducing new topics and new things that you are learning from the clubhouse, as James brought up, or even doing more in-depth stories, right? Every baseball broadcaster, whoever wanted that job, always cites Vin Scully. And Scully was the master of sharing this long, elaborate story about some player when he was 9 years old, broke his arm and couldn't play baseball that summer. And it became this profound thing. And look at him. He just hit a double. Not everyone could do that. But those are some of the things that Schriffen's going to have to introduce into the broadcast. Flex your baseball knowledge, man. You played ball. You know ball. You don't always have to rely on Steve Stone. That would be my constructive criticism, is to start inserting more of your knowledge about the game, because I think this broadcast is going to get repetitive very soon if it's always the Chuck Swirsky model of passing it over to Steve Stone for analysis and not more conversational.
Does that mean he's going to block me on Twitter in a few days?
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
After this segment, he's going to listen to this segment. He's going to block you. He'll like what James and I have to say. I'm kidding.
Yeah. It was nice knowing you, John. No, it's the difference between like Benetti when he took over. There are a couple differences. One is Benetti had been calling minor league games for years, so like his pace of the game and the knowledge of how to fill dead time with like things he'd learned or things happening around the league is a lot more natural to him. The other thing was that he was sharing time with Hawk. So if Benetti wasn't quite your cup of tea early on, right, or if like you weren't just used to the volume of words in a broadcast that he used compared to Hawk, like you always had Hawk just around the corner to be like, all right, can't wait till next weekend. White Sox are back on the road. I'll have Hawk broadcast. And then you could go back to Benetti and realize like it's this transition is going to happen. So you had time to at least resign yourself to it if you weren't a Benetti fan, or warm up to him if you were getting used to him and he was working through his own. Because I remember like, yeah, he sometimes over talked and, you know, ran jokes off cliffs, just because he didn't know when to cut it off and got a little bit too yuck. And I think that happened at the end when the White Sox baseball got really bad. But like, there's a sweet spot there when the White Sox were really compelling to where like Benetti was great. It was hard to find a better framer of the game in terms of just, letting the action filling in around the action with information, whether about the White Sox or the rest of the league. So I think that's what, I miss personally from Benetti, and hoping Schriffen, like as he gets more accustomed to the pace of the game, the time he has to fill that aren't about the promos or, kind of about his first road trips or his first restaurant he went to in Chicago. It's more about like a natural relationship versus kind of this tourist feel that there is right now in the booth. Then yeah, I'm hoping that research will pay off, because, when you look at his other work, in college, you read about him, you read what people have said about him. Like James has said, and everybody says like he's always there, and he's very single-minded. Now it's just a matter of like, that putting that single-mindedness towards like a variety of areas versus, just trying to get, the excitement level right for a team that's not exciting.
He rises to the occasion. That's the toughest thing about calling baseball. You're going at 10 miles an hour, and then boom, you got to go like 120 because something big just happened, or your voice cracks. Like, I love listening to Len Casper, but that unfortunately happens to him at times, where he has that moment where he hits puberty and his voice just doesn't want to hold when he's calling a big home run. It happens to all of us when we get really excited. But no, I think John's doing a good job to start. And we'll see how it progresses throughout the rest of the 2024 season. The White Sox continue their homestand. The Minnesota Twins now coming to town. And man, the last time we talked about the Twins on this podcast, they were 7-13. I was worried about how they were starting. And then they sweep the White Sox, and they have not stopped losing. The Twins have now won 7 straight games. They're 14-13. They're still in 4th place in the American League Central. How about that? The American League Central playing better than expected baseball to start this season. And the Twins have won 8 of their last 10 games. Again, big thanks to that 7-game winning streak. Your pitching probables for this series starting on Monday and Tuesday night. These are 6:40 p.m. Central Time starts. Monday, it's Joe Ryan against Garrett Crochet. Tuesday night is Dog Day. Simeon Wood Richardson's going to make the start for Minnesota against Michael Soroka. And then Wednesday's Getaway Day, 1:10 p.m. Central Time start. Bailey Ober is the scheduled starter for the Twins against Chris Flexen. The White Sox, even coming after this weekend, sorry to bring up this dour point, are 2-15 against the American League Central to start 2024. Jim, can the White Sox finally win a game against Minnesota?
I think they can. I feel like I'm going on a limb. Like, I don't feel especially confident, but it is like a slightly different look team. Like, whether you attribute it to Tommy Pham or just like his personality, or just the fact that like he lengthens the lineup, it's a little bit different of a look. Scouting report, I mean, the White Sox should have won a game against Minnesota last time. So like they weren't completely run off the field last time around. So yeah, I think they can steal a win, assuming like Bailey Ober doesn't dominate him the way that he always seems to. That 90-mile-per-hour fastball gets up on him in a way that other teams don't seem to be as fazed by. But yeah, what the hell, I'll say a win.
James, Garrett Crochet, he could use a good outing. Anything you heard while speaking with him about the adjustments he's trying to make before his start on Monday?
Post game in Minneapolis, he was like, I've given him up 4 home runs on back foot sliders to righties. I'm never going to throw a back foot slider righty again. Was kind of his mindset at the time. And now he's like, I've been looking at, we were talking today, he's like, I've been looking at video, and I think it's one of the first times I feel like a player's confessed that he has like lying eyes. He's like, every time I think like, all right, I've been like working upstairs effectively, like I was like, I look back at videos, like I've been throwing everything at the belt and getting away with it. Like I can go a lot higher than I've been going. And he said, like, since he's become a starter, there's been so much focus, and it's always emphasized as left-handed starters, like you got to bust the righties in. You can't just live away. And he's been going kind of relentlessly into a level of detriment. And something that, watching an old video of himself as a reliever when his command was even more scattershot, was that when he would throw these like outer half slide fastballs, and he even said he did it accidentally against the Braves a little bit in the way that he didn't realize until he went back and looked at video. his sweeper is his slider. He calls it a slider, but it's a sweeper. He calls it a slider because of how sweeper it is. And if he doesn't call it a slider, it will sweep even more. Is his fear. It's so big that the thing that will actually tunnel with it to set it up is not an inner half fastball. It's an outer half fastball because they both start like way up here and then sweep all the way down. So he has to throw the heater to kind of command the outer half just as much as the inner half, and that's what's going to set up the sweeper. He can still kind of try to go inside low and away at the cutter. It can be a little bit harder, and something he definitely wants to do is throw a little bit of that Vulcan changeup that he's been working on a bit more, just to give something outer half. But he felt like he wasn't, the phrase that he put for is like, I wasn't playing the tunnel game as much as I should be. I felt like with spring and the first couple starts, I was just blowing everybody away, and I wasn't really thinking in those terms. I wasn't checking my locations to see like why swings happen based on how I set them up. I kind of just, overreacted a little bit and thought like, well, this pitch doesn't work, I'm never going to throw it again. And then looking back and like, well, I didn't set it up location wise as good as I thought. And if I'm really thinking about where I want to throw my fastball to set up a sweeper on the back foot, it needs to account for how big the sweeper is. He had a little bit of like cutter and slider blending together issues in Philly, but he feels like he's largely over it. So I think when trying to map out where will they get the win, the Twins are a lineup that should realistically be like shredded by Eric Fedde because they don't have many righties to throw at him. So if he can kind of be a little bit more efficient at how he's tunneling things and how he's setting them up, and not kind of, the few righties that he faced, someone like Austin Martin, where they threw in him, that Garrett's actually faced a ton in college when they were Tennessee and Vandy. He said like whenever I threw him in college, I always blew him away, but like clearly everybody that I faced, every right-hander I faced in Minneapolis was just sitting on the inner half and ignoring what I did outer half to me. So I think now he's a bit more, usually you think of pitchers in the lineups facing each other twice in like a week, and you think the offense has the advantage because of the way Minnesota executed its game plan on it, and Garrett was kind of the one to go back to the drawing board. I feel like maybe the advantage on that's a little bit flipped because he's seen what like kind of the book on him is, and now the ball's kind of on his court to flip it, and Minnesota will be reacting in game a bit more.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Jose Quintana, his rookie year, where he had a lot of surprising success because he could hammer that inside corner to righties over and over again until maybe I think like late August, when hitters realize like, oh, I just can open up and feast on the inside corner fastball, because he couldn't, part game plan, but also I think he was like physically unable to repeat a delivery that could have that kind of arm side command. So he kept going glove side, glove side, glove side. And eventually the trick ran out, and then he figured it out over the course of off season, either, rest, back to the drawing board a little bit with how his pitches worked, but eventually figured out how to hit arm side too. And once he had the whole plate opened up, he had the staying power versus the half season flash in the pan. Who is this guy that everybody thought he was going to be?
So with Crochet start on Monday, James, for White Sox fans, focus on how he's locating on the outer half against the Twins righties.
Yeah, and in turn, does that set up the sweeper to get better results than it's gotten against right-handers, and just in general than we've been seeing? Because it seemed like he wasn't. It's kind of a more basic way of thinking of it. Like, well, if I throw a fastball to that spot, and then I throw the slider to that spot, they're kind of tunneling together, where he's now accounting for the size of the sweeper and the movement for it, that he's got to almost think of it as tunneling, but the tunnel has such a large break that he needs to think of it as the other side of the plate.
Well, we will be keeping an eye on that, and of course recapping the games on SoxMachine.com. You can read those game recaps, and of course don't forget about the pregame notes as well, as James takes what he learns from the pregame media scrums and feeds that to SoxMachine.com. So definitely check out our pregame notes articles before the games start, and you can comment along the games as well. It kind of serves as a game thread now with other Sox Machine commenters during the game. Our final topic, around Major League Baseball. This is the thing that we're doing on the Monday episodes, and I'll start here as we got some news coming in from Jeff Passan of ESPN regarding the uniform issue for Major League Baseball. New uniforms are on the way. At the very latest, new uniforms will be delivered to teams across the league by the start of the 2025 season. meaning there is a chance that we're going to see an updated of uniform some point this regular season. The Major League Baseball Players Association informed players of the coming changes, and according to Jeff Passan, in a letter that placed the blame on Nike and the debut of Nike's Vapor Premier uniform, which was advertised for its superior performance but remains disliked by players, quote, "This has been entirely a Nike issue," the memo to players read. At its core, what has happened here is that Nike was innovating something that didn't need to be innovated, end quote. So what are some of the adjustments upcoming? Larger lettering. There's been a mismatching of grays. We haven't seen the White Sox wear their gray uniforms a whole bunch this season. Sweat stains. Old friend Carlos Rodon, I apologize. You didn't look all that great when you're sweating through the new Yankees uniform. And there's been a problem with the pants stitching and pants ripping when players are sliding. And the lettering in the back just continues to bug me, Jim, especially when at White Sox games. How do you feel about it, James? When you're all the way up in the press box, does it bother you if you're trying to look up who's actually on the field, or do you just automatically go to the computer now and see what the box score says?
As far as like seeing guys in the field, I think the main thing I notice is like, in Sox games, like it's harder to tell who's in the bullpen. I do bring binoculars because I'm an old man, but I think the lettering is probably the main thing that like stands out, especially in terms of like reading Benintendi's name. Like Benintendi's an unmistakable presence, kind of like for the opposite reason Noah Schultz is like on the baseball field, where it's like that little guy, that's him. But I would say like it's not, I can't see like sweat stains from the press box, but I'd say lettering just looks, there's no mistaking, like it's almost, especially a thing when we're picking out pictures for articles. It's like, well, I can't sneak in like this last year's picture of Garrett Crochet because like if it's his back and his delivery, it's like, well, this is obviously an old photo because like it's so distinctly like it just looks like from another time and different era because of like how jarring the lettering is.
I'm curious, like when they're trying to sell these jerseys they have, like, can they justify selling them at retail price? I mean, they will, but I mean, it's a case of like, if they're admitting they're bad, like, why would fans pay full price for them?
I don't think fans are buying a lot of jerseys right now. That might be influencing the decision for Major League Baseball to overhaul the uniforms as quickly as possible, especially with like the recent WNBA draft, Caitlin Clark smashing the Fanatics record, and then that record got broken by the Chicago Bears with Caleb Williams being drafted first overall. So Fanatics has been selling a ton of jerseys. I don't know how many baseball jerseys they are selling, especially with just how ridiculous, especially the lettering looks. It looks bad. So we're getting new uniforms. We'll see when they arrive. Hopefully it fixes a lot of the issues that has been aesthetically not pleasing to watch baseball this season. James, I'll go to you. What is drawing your attention around Major League Baseball?
Well, certainly after this weekend, whatever the hell is wrong with the Tampa Bay Rays is something that comes to mind. I don't think I've ever seen Randy Arozarena look as bad as he looked this weekend. I mean, I think Jim mentioned it in recaps, but like there were multiple times where he came up big where he's just late on all velocity. And like Kopech was having like that kind of pull out your hair inning. I want to say it was Saturday, and then gets to the point where he realizes that like Arozarena is just going to swing through every fastball. And he's just like, oh, okay. It's just like two more of those. Like this has been so complicated up to this point. It's so crazy to see them a year later where it just seemed like they couldn't do anything wrong. Like everybody in their lineup had a 900 OPS, and like some of that with like Harold Ramirez, maybe you thought like, well, this isn't going to last. This is goofy. But Arozarena looked like somebody who was, going to get MVP votes, was, a rising superstar. To now see him like batting 149 with like maybe a 210 OBP and just looking not dangerous at the plate, in addition to like maybe swinging out of his shoes. Just, it was surreal. Like they sat him for the finale yesterday. Like the White Sox walked guys to get him up. It was strange to see, and it's baseball's hard and success is fleeting, I guess is my big takeaway from that. Also, felt like I was covering a playoff chase a little bit post game today because we got out of the clubhouse and I flicked on that Marlins game to see whether it was going to clinch it, that the White Sox would no longer have the worst record in baseball. And sure enough, they blew that 7-run lead and got swept at home. It's a 3-game series. They've lost 3 to the Nationals. They could get swept a 4-game sweep tomorrow, the way things are trending. And Tim is not particularly heated up either, though. There's more than one person to blame in that clubhouse at this point.
Yeah, Randy Arozarena, his season OPS now falls to 483. OPS 483 for Randy Arozarena in 2024. Jim, how about you? What's catching your attention around the league?
Yeah, the Rays were, number one on my list just because we saw the Twins use the White Sox to get better, and I thought that's what the Rays were going to do. They're kind of scuffling going in the series, but the White Sox have been miserable. So yeah, get a sweep, win 2 out of 3, get back over 500, get on your way. And now it's a case of, not only, looking bad at the plate, but also pretty sloppy in the field too. A lot more mistakes than you're used to seeing from them, like Kevin Cash benching Jose Siri because of a bad effort in center field. So they're all off kilter right now in a way that we're not used to seeing them. So I'm curious how they'll look going forward. The other thing that's kind of jumping out to me along the lines of bad teams is the Angels are falling apart again. And so for those of us who are wondering whether Ron Washington's kind of gravitas would make a difference if the White Sox hired him for last year's White Sox versus Pedro Grifol, probably not much of a difference, even though it's a difference tonally in terms of how Washington goes about his business, but it doesn't seem like he's a miracle worker when it comes to a franchise that's completely adrift. And then the other one is the Astros. They had a make good series against the Rockies, but Abreu's still off. They still haven't won 10 games. There's the Joe Espada thing. Speaking of sliding doors with the White Sox managers, if Espada happened to get the job, would he look like Pedro Grifol? Because right now things are kind of falling apart on him being there, and maybe he's just holding the bag the way that would have fallen apart on Dusty Baker or Tony La Russa had they managed a year past the years they stepped down. But in the meantime, it's not a great introduction for Espada as another guy who, like Grifol, who was not a major leaguer and respected bench coach or baseball man, but not somebody who you traditionally associate as a powerful managerial profile. Had to work his way up, and right now it's not looking great for him so far. So those are the two I'm looking at. Although on the other side you have the Royals, and Matt Quatraro was that guy last year where turns out he's another Charlie Montoyo, Rays bench coach who can't really bring that magic elsewhere, but now the Royals look okay. So perhaps it's a case of managers are only mostly as good as their organizations are, and at the Royals, locking up their best player and signing other guys who can contribute and spending some money to do so, whereas the Angels did not. Maybe that's the difference right now.
As Jim mentions, the Angels and Astros, they're currently 4th and 5th place in the American League West. The Oakland A's at 12-17 are 3rd place in the American League West. They are 8-8 on the road this year. I do not think that's a coincidence. Oakland might play better on the road than at home, as we all know what's going on at home for the Oakland A's. But so far to start the year, the A's have been playing better baseball than the Houston Astros and Los Angeles Angels. We'll see how long that lasts this season. But that'll do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can now also listen to the Sox Machine Podcast on YouTube Music. You can also watch our videos there. If you do watch our videos at youtube.com/Sox Machine, please hit the subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. And of course, you can follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan, and you can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and you want more and you want full access to all of our coverage, you can sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. Your guys' support allows us to send James out to White Sox games to get all those wonderful audio clips that we had at the beginning of this podcast and gain additional insight that we've never had before with our White Sox coverage and even with the minor leagues. As James wrote, I think, shy of 10,000 words about White Sox prospects on Sunday.
But not Jake Heater.
You can read that again on SoxMachine.com. Again, your guys' support, greatly appreciative. It helps us tremendously to continue covering the Chicago White Sox the way that we have. If you haven't signed up yet, go ahead and do so at patreon.com/SoxMachine. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside James Fegan and Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
Hello, Saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.